So, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. And welcome to In Silico Medicine and Beyond, a new VPH chapter, a live online event by VPH, the Society for In Silico Medicine. My name is Davide Montesarchio. I am a science communicator at VPH. And for those of you who are new to our community, I'll spend a few words describing who we are. VPH is an international scientific community with a mission to advance in silico medicine worldwide. We are an ecosystem organization, and our vision is to bring together diverse stakeholder communities of scientists, industry, healthcare providers, patients, regulators, and policymakers to drive the development and integration of computer models in healthcare. In today's event, we take a glimpse into the future, exploring what lies ahead for in silico medicine and for VPH itself. We are honored to be joined by an outstanding lineup of world-leading experts who will guide us through what in silico medicine might look like in the next 10 years. Our speakers include Liesbet Geris, VPH Director and Professor at KU Leuven and University of Liège, followed by Eric Vibert, surgeon at Centre Hepatobiliaire at Paul Brousse Hospital in Paris and professor at University Paris-Saclay and INSERM. Then we will have Tina Morrison, Vice President and Scientific Strategist at EQT Lab and former science advisor to the Chief Scientist of the US Food and Drug Administration. And last, but certainly not least, Stephen Bourke, founder and CEO of Personal Pulse, with over 20 years of experience building bridges between patients and healthcare innovators. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we begin. We will start with 4 short talks. There will be no Q&A session. And at the end of the event, we'll reveal a special announcement you won't want to miss. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand the floor to our director, Liesbet Geris. Thank you.
So also from my side, good afternoon, good morning, or good night, everyone. It's my pleasure to start or to kick off this series of talks by talking about how at VPH we have tried to address this digital transformation of health and care. And before I start, maybe just to contextualize a little bit the keywords in silico medicine, digital twins, virtual human twins. There's a whole series of keywords out there. The way we interpret it within the context of the VPH is really in the broadest sense. So the use of computer modeling and simulations in all aspects of health and care, from prevention to diagnosis, treatment prediction, follow-up, and then the use of real-world data to further improve, de-risk, personalized therapies, drugs, devices for patients, and advance healthcare in that way. So with that being said, let's go back to where it began. VPH, the virtual physiological human, is a term that originated on a terrace with a beer, as it often goes, within the European context. So the European Commission had a funding stream that was called the virtual physiological human. And the idea there was indeed to start building models to use them to improve healthcare. Now, there wasn't a society that was really addressing the very specific challenges of that endeavor. There were technical societies, like you had the European Society of Biomechanics, BMES, other societies, and then you had, of course, also discipline-related, more clinically oriented societies. But there wasn't really a society that was trying to bring people together that were really focusing on the translation of these in silico tools from bed to bedside. And that was really the niche that the VPH Institute tried to sit in. So the way we organized at the very beginning, we had a few staunch believers in the vision of the VPH that really helped to found the society and also to fund the society to get it going. We had the previous directors, Marco Vicciconti and Adriano Henny, that came before me that really helped to further develop the Institute. Now, what we tried to do in those early days was really identify the common challenges and establish ourselves as an organization that wanted to tackle those. So from the very beginning, we have been trying to engage with regulators, with policymakers, not only in the European Union with the Commission and the Parliament, but also in the US, in Congress and Senate, with meetings that we had to try and discuss with policymakers very early on what was the potential of in silico medicine. They couldn't always see it, but we kept on developing our technologies or supporting our members in developing their technologies, and then building roadmaps. And there was an early roadmap called the Avicenna roadmap for in silico trials that led then to the formalization of our engagement with industry in the form of the Avicenna Alliance. Now then we went on to more the present, let's say the last 5 years of the Institute, where we kept growing as a society. Our conference, for instance, went from 250 participants to 450 participants in the last edition, and still kept that kind of very familiar feeling to it. Now, in the context of the collaboration with the Avicenna Alliance, we continue to cover policy challenges to address regulatory science with our partners in FDA and other organizations, and continue to bridge that gap between academia and public, or academia, public, and industry. Now, we also decided to become a partner in European projects to further build our team and to gain strength and actually be able to tackle some of these challenges ourselves and not just report on them and identify them. So in Horizon 2020 and in Horizon Europe, those are funding frameworks in the European Union, we became a partner responsible for dissemination and communication, for stakeholder engagement, for developing policy and regulation advice, and driving ecosystem building. And this allowed us to build our team at VPH. It currently exists of 8 people that have half of which, or 2/3 of which, have a background in communication and science communication and graphic design, and others that then focus on the social sciences and on the policy and regulatory angles. So with this team, we were able to develop a whole series of tools that we made available that would help the community to also tackle some of these challenges like stakeholder engagement. So for instance, we developed an info kit that allows people to do outreach, or that explains people how to do outreach, that contains all of the necessary tools, the success stories, the templates that are necessary to do that. We have developed a podcast series called Digital Twin Theory, an animated video series that will explain you the key concepts of in silico medicine in 10 short videos. We have called Code and Cure. We contributed to the establishment of the Good Simulation Practice book. That was a collaboration with all of the stakeholders in the engagement. And then, of course, recently we had the honor to lead the road mapping exercise for the virtual human twin in the European community. But we had contributions of over 800 people from all across the world. And this led to the definition of what is called the roadmap for the European virtual human twin. And you will find all of these links to the things that I mentioned here in the chat. And this really paints a picture of what are the current challenges, what are the current needs, how to address this, not only from the point of view of the technology and the infrastructure that we need, but also the ethics, the legal, the social issues, the standards, the regulatory, the uptake, the industrial side, and the incentivization, and then it ends with recommendations for the future. And now, how do we intend as VPH to help bring about this future? Well, we want to continue as a society, as a membership-based society, we want to continue to grow, because the more members we have, the better we can represent the community. We also want to grow in terms of the projects that we want to engage in. We now have a very well experienced team, and so we hope to be able to engage with many of you to assist you in helping to develop your science and bringing it to the clinicians, bringing it to the patients, making sure that they're involved not just as passive bystanders, but really as co-creators from the very beginning. We've been very slowly building up our influence or our engagement within with legislators and with regulators, and we really see now that this is getting into a acceleration modus, and so we want to continue to drive these aspects to make sure that modeling and simulation, that in silico medicine is well represented in the regulatory science, in the legislative framework, so that we can continue to bring these solutions to the patients. We want to further commit to bringing in the patients and the clinicians, and we want to work on building the trust. Because trust requires not only credibility assessment of the technologies, but also the development of this relationship, the development of an understanding, the education, and also the accountability for the technologies that we are developing. So with all of this, we at VPH try, as a society, we try to help and keep supporting the digital transformation to an equitable, inclusive, and a sustainable technology. So with this, I give the floor back to you, David.
Thank you very much, Lies, for your inspiring words. And now let's move to our second talk. I leave the floor to Eric Vibert. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks a lot for this opportunity to speak with you about digital twin. And if I speak about the subject, it's because I work from a long time with Irène Villon-Clémentel. Is a mathematician that worked from a long time about digital twin. And me, I am liver surgeon, so I deliver surgery and liver transplantation. And my job is finally simple. It consists to remove a tumor, as you see here, as a dot into the liver. And we need to remove this and considering the organization of the liver. The liver is like a soft broccoli. I need to remove one part of the liver, but to preserve the other part to have a good vascularization. And obviously, we know that the anatomy of the liver is complex, but this is a simple scheme of the anatomy of the liver that have been described long time ago by French anatomist Quinault. And we have this in the brain, and we need to do that, to remove one piece of the broccoli, but the deformable broccoli, because as you see, when we move the liver, it's deformable. And it is complex to do that because we use to do that a 3D model, and we analyze with a 2D, with a ultrasound. So we need to do that as accurately as possible. And we know now from a long time that Quinault scheme, it means a very simple vision of the anatomy is not enough. So we know that we need to develop anatomical twin from the liver. And it is very important that I don't develop a digital twin of the patient, I develop digital twin of the organs, and especially of the liver. And we want to use not a very simple vision of the anatomy of the liver, but a very precise anatomy. And we know that it is necessary to do that, to do 3D reconstruction. And this is an example of what happened when you consider a very simple vision of the 3D anatomy. You see here, we have done a surgery, and there is one part of the liver is not vascularized at the end of the surgery. And you see here, this is a good vascularization because we inject a product and we see it is green, but this part, it is not vascularized, and there is an impact on survival. And we have proved that recently when we assess the consequences of a non-precise surgery. This is a very important fact for the risk of recurrence. And you see that there is here a modification of the curve of recurrence according to the fact that you have a piece of the liver or not at the end of surgery, that it is not correctly vascularized. It means that you have injury, one part of the liver that you want to conserve. So it is important to do that, and we know that it is possible to do better than we do, because in Japan, as an example, the mortality of the surgery is 4.1, and in Europe it is 31. It is absolutely amazing, the difference, and you see in this curve there is some difference at the start of the history. It means that It is because a patient in Europe die after the same time of hepatectomy than in Japan that we have worse results. So clearly, it's possible to improve our result using digital twin to be able to prepare the hepatectomy. And we do digital twin to prepare the hepatectomy not only for the very precise anatomy to be able to do the anatomy before to do the anatomy, do the hepatectomy before to do the real hepatectomy in real life, but also to consider not only anatomical digital twin, as I have proved before with a 3D model, but hemodynamic digital twin. Because I work with Irene for a long time now to be able to predict the consequences of our gesture, not only for the anatomy, but also for the hemodynamics. Because we know that there is a very important risk of mortality if at the end of the surgery, the gradient between the pressure into the vena cava and the pressure into the portal vein, so the hemodynamics of the liver, is associated with mortality if this gradient is superior to 12 or if the portal pressure is superior to 20. So with Irene, we have included in our digital twin not only anatomy but also hemodynamics, and now we have a very nice future together where we want to integrate not only the hemodynamic of the liver, but the interaction between heart and chest, and especially right heart and the liver, to be able to prepare and to planify the best therapeutics into a patient with a liver disease, because it could be surgery, it could be transplantation, it could be local destruction, or it could be portal caval shunt, it means TIPS, interventional radiology. So clearly, for me, digital twin, and not digital twin of the patient, but digital twin of the organs, with an S at organs, because it is not only the liver, it is the liver more the heart, because there is obviously interaction. It is a way to improve our result for to avoid to have poor surgery with a high mortality, and we know that it is possible to do better than we do because Japanese are able to do that. We are not Japanese, but we need to have digital twin to be like a Japanese, and also to use hemodynamics to go perhaps better than Japanese with the hemodynamics. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your talk. And now it's the turn of Tina Morrison.
Thank you all so much for the invitation to participate on this. Since we were tasked with asking for a future vision, I thought I would bring something a little bit different to the table. From the standpoint of, sorry, I clicked too fast. From the standpoint of thinking about a trust infrastructure and what kinds of technology might we need in order to help visualize not just the digital twins that we're thinking about, and thank you so much, Eric, for that great overview of what you're doing for patients, but thinking about even beyond the organ system types of digital twins. So when we think about traditional engineering structures, especially those of us from the engineering space, we acknowledge that digital twins are very revolutionary for engineered type structures. The ability to implant sensors, the ability to create these interfaces where this inorganic structure can live in a city like this Kohlbronn Bridge in Hamburg, where they are using this technology to investigate maintenance and service for this type of bridge. It's easy for us to quickly, those of us in the computational medicine world, to think about how revolutionary this is going to be for human health. And I think that those of us that have been in this community for a long time, we've been thinking about the idea of harnessing the power of digital twins at least this snapshot here in the upper left is just a graphic of something I presented to a regulatory community back in 2020. And I know folks at the VPH, once they stood up the Institute, have been thinking more comprehensively about the virtual human, all the way from the operation of the proteins and the cells, this multi-scale model to build this virtual human. And colleagues, Drs. Coveney and Highfield, have put together this really fantastic book on all the different components of what's needed for a virtual you. And while I know that those of us in this community are really thinking that we're harnessing the power of digital twins, I think we're still just at the beginning of what this is really going to look like to revolutionize human health. And where I want to take us for a moment is to consider not just the compilation of mechanistic models alongside AI, to think about organ models, to think about a collection of organ models like Eric presented, but actually thinking about the role of LLMs and AI and health agents. In the United States, the Trusted Exchange Framework and Common Agreement, known as TEFCA, is really going to allow patients the ability to have better access to their medical records. So if patients have better access to their medical records, and we have these tools that allow us to interface with our doctors, what is it going to look like when I can upload my medical records potentially into an LLM, maybe even harness the ability to utilize mechanistic models alongside this? Am I going to be able to have my personal health agent actually also represent my digital twin? One of the things that I'm thinking about alongside this future in terms of what's possible is to think about how do we protect ourselves from deep fakes. And in this context here is a graphic of, a fake video of Einstein post a fighting championship, right? So there's so much going on the web, it's very difficult to believe what we're seeing. So in extrapolating that a bit further, what happens in the case when a patient or someone can create fake data, fake medical records? And I chose fake instead of synthetic and artificial data because that's actually an area of important work to be able to create more data to train these LLMs. But we're living in a world where we are being flooded with lots of fake data. And so how are we going to protect ourselves from that? One small detour is just to present to you this really interesting textbook that came out in the 1950s titled The Human Use of Human Beings. And Dr. Weiner, he argued that modern science, modern societies are going to be run by a means of messages. And taking that one step further, that as these societies grow more complex, the greater amount of their affairs will depend on messages between man and machine, which we are in that state now, and machines and man, but focusing on this last point about machine and machine. So thinking about that personal health agent as a machine acting on our behalf, is it possible that we've arrived at a future where these agents will be acting on our behalf? And I posit that it's coming close to this future. In fact, last year we hit this inflection point where more traffic on the internet was due to non-human web traffic. So the LLMs that we're using from the large companies are being able to access information from the web on our behalf. And actually from several reports, this one from the Cyber Threat Index identified that 73% of that traffic was actually malicious traffic. So we've really arrived at this place in human history where it's going to be critical for us to have a trust infrastructure in place to trust the different institutions that we're operating with, in addition to into our human counterparts. So let's consider this clinical workflow for a second, and we think about the different steps for how a digital twin could be created. And this is just one possible workflow from a collaboration on the digital twin to envision precision medicine for cardiology that we published in 2020. So a patient comes to a hospital, they either have some patient-specific data already, or they're going to have some kind of intervention that requires them to access their data. We'll put it into our digital twin machine, which will be a combination of statistical and mechanistic frameworks their digital twin will be created, and maybe there will be some clinical interpretation of that, a possible additional medical intervention, so some additional data that's collected. And there will be some outcomes and follow-ups, and then that information can go back into the digital twin at a future time, or can actually be combined into a collection of data, a population or a collection of digital twins. But I really want to challenge you to just consider this interaction between the patient visiting a hospital and this patient-specific data that they're either bringing with them, that those interactions could actually happen through agents, where I could walk into a hospital and my technology that's probably on my phone can interact with some wireless technology in the hospital. But how am I going to trust that the agent will act on my behalf, or how will the hospital system even trust that I'm a patient with information and data that can actually be added to, say, this collection of data? So there's a really important initiative that's happening through the IEEE. There's a new standard that's a standard on clinical Internet of Things data and devices related to a broader collection of clinical Internet of Things. But in thinking about the context of digital twins, all of these different components, these different touch points are opportunities where there's a need for trust. There's a need for privacy, protection, security. And so in thinking about how would we enable this kind of trust between agents, because agents are vulnerable to attack just like they are when they're accessing the internet. There's backdoor routes these agents can take. There's potential privacy issues. So we're working on taking and developing a trust framework that allows us to be able to develop credentials. Let's figure out what are the requirements for the data, the models, and the tools, how we would package that information, improving that the data that I use, the model that I use, the tools that I use are appropriate for this particular agent. Now I've identified that I'm an agent and I've used all these right things. Am I actually following any safety regulations? Am I compliant to the important regulations around AI or agents, or for example, compliance to HIPAA? Do I have the permission and the authority to operate in the situation that I'm facing? And so let's assume that we can package all of this information into a kind of cryptographic credential, and now I can say this agent is certified to act on my behalf. The hospital system itself would also have a similar credential, and then these agents can exchange credentials on our behalf very quickly through a firewall engagement. They can then say, okay, now we're able to have this trusted communication. The hospital can allow this agent to take the data from this patient's medical collection of medical records, and that hospital can also then take that information and provide that patient back with the information from the hospital back to their health agent digital twin that they're carrying in their pocket. And so I think this is a possible vision for the future, but it's going to be critical for us to verify what's happening with those agents in real time, because you can't just take the agent's word for it. It's going to be critical for us to adopt personalized digital twins for the future of our health, but the adoption of those personalized digital twins will only move at the speed of trust, at the speed of the ability for us to share these kind of credentials. And the foundation for some of that technology, I gave a brief overview of that at a recent conference, so those slides are available for you to take a look at yourself, and if this is something of interest, happy to have a follow-up conversation. Thank you for the chance to share this vision of the future of a certified digital you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tina. And last, and of course not least, Stephen Bourke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here. Our relationship with health and the virtual world, it changed radically for so many of us as a result of the global COVID-19 pandemic. We were thrust into this type of world, a world of virtual meetings. But we can all remember the immense joy once the lockdowns were removed at being able to connect with people, the human connection. Now, during that time, I joined a company, a global company, and as a social butterfly, I needed to connect with the person. But how do you do that in a genuine way in a virtual world? Well, I asked a simple question. I said, what made you smile today? And it had two effects. First, the person had a chance to pause and reflect, and it really humanized our virtual call. But it also gave me some of these moments of exceptional joy and a huge amount of smiles. Now, I don't have the opportunity to go through every single interaction, but there was one which stood out, which I'm going to tell you about today. And it's going to help us connect the dots between the inclusion of people who are patients as partners in the next generation of digital twins. So I asked my colleague, what made you smile today? And she answered after that wonderful moment of pause and reflection. And she said, I heard a song on the radio that took me back to dancing with my friends in my bedroom as a teenager. Now, each one of us has that piece of music that makes us stop, makes us pause. When we hear it on the radio, when we listen to it on a cassette tape, when we play a CD, when we stream it. So how am I going to link the future of in silico medicine with people who are patients? Okay, so I'd like to use a simple, yet I think is a powerful analogy. So we see how music has the power to evoke emotions, a result being a physiological output of an emotional response. And if we take the composer and an orchestra as an analogy, we can see how public and patients, with their clinical results, their wearables, their digital biomarker data, as the musicians, and we each play our own health melody. And where I see the digital twin community are, what their role is the composers and conductors. They're blending that melody into a symphony which reveals those imbalances and harmony. Our musicians, the public and patient, get back improved sheet music and personalized feedback. So together, we're creating such impactful music, and that's through co-creation and mutual value, that new symphonies are born. However, in many instances, it's the patient who's required to be the conductor of that symphony. And oftentimes, we haven't learned how to read or write the sheet music. The style of music doesn't suit us, but we want to be able to create the beautiful music of good health. What's sort of ironic is that each of us has our own personal and universal rhythm section. It's our heartbeat. And for anyone who's ever had the chance to hear a heartbeat of a baby while it's still in the womb, well, we know that's the real rhythm of life. As someone who lives with heart disease, as someone who never met their grandparents because both of them died in their early 60s from an aneurysm and stroke on my mum's side, as someone who lives with a mother who lives with chronic heart failure, as an elder sister who has had a stroke, I'm intimately aware of my blood pressure, of my beat, of my heartbeat, of what the rhythm section is keeping, whether that beat is right. And when I see the work in cardiac twins from impactful leaders like Natalia Trainova and the prediction models, I realize that this work is actively changing the way care is delivered to patients. Now, combine that with the revolution in wearable technology and digital biomarkers, particularly commercial devices such as smartwatches, which can aid early detection of arrhythmias using that single lead ECG. And then you have a translation of that data into a clinical decision tree, and we elevate our ground truth beyond the clinic. Actually, I'd urge you to read a recent publication by Noé Brazier. He's one of my close clinical collaborators. And it's on the Basel Wearable Clinic, and it's in Nature Reviews of Bioengineering. We'll share the link with you. It outlines how the Basel Wearable Clinic has demonstrated that wearable data can be translated into meaningful clinical actions. Now we begin to see that the music becomes richer through meaningful collaboration and co-creation. But when I think of the intersection of this model and real-world cardiac data bringing insights to clinical care, I think there's an entire section of the orchestra that's missing. That's the lived experience data. We gather biomarker data from a physiological response, but not knowing the context of that response can lead us to assumptions. And our models are only as good as our ground truth and the assumptions we infer. So when it comes to health data modeling, we're missing the messiness of human existence. So over the next decade at Personal Pulse, I want to actively collaborate with bringing the patient community and the digital twin community together to integrate patient lived experience data to create a richer symphony of health data. So what does that look like in the short term? Well, in the first instance, let's look to use that structured data, the patient-reported outcomes, the patient-reported experience measures, the PREMs and PROMs, for decision aids and remote monitoring, and integrate those into the twins. Over the medium term, we're going to develop the look at what it is like for semantically rich twins with natural language processing pipelines, creating mature pipelines that convert free text patterns into structured interoperable features, tidying up the messiness of human existence in order to work with the data science. And then the long term, we're going to deliver regulated, routine use. We want the co-creation with regulators, with the health system, with the payers, that they recognize validated digital twin outputs that include patient experience, population scale twins, patient community twins supporting prevention, equity analysis, and patient-driven research. But before you rush out to solve all these problems and take these ideas, remember that you need to co-create with the patient community to avoid the assumptions that the clinic can play every single musical instrument. Look for PROMs and PREMs that have been validated and co-created with the patients. Inclusion of patients requires support of the patient community and organizations, more than just capacity building, but delivering data that can address their unmet needs as well. Over the next 10 years, digital twins will evolve into a hybrid patient empowering models that can treat patients' lived experience as first-class data, not just optional fluff. When collected and modeled responsibly, looking with standards and conversions, validations and governance, that qualitative lived experience data will enhance your twins' clinical relevance, facilitate shared decision-making, and improve adherence predictions, leading all to better health outcomes. How music has been composed, how it's been listened to, how it's been sold, how it's been enjoyed, that's undergone unconceivable changes, but we still love a live performance. So I'd like you to join me in creating new music to model through co-creation with people who are patients in health innovation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Stephen, for your inspiring and beautiful words. And now it's time for the special announcement we have been teasing you on our social media over the past month. It is a real pleasure for me and for the entire VPH team to finally share some exciting news. After more than a decade, VPH has a brand new logo, a refreshed visual identity, and a completely redesigned website. We prepared a video.
It all began with what seemed like a foolish dream. to turn numbers into knowledge, to use code and simulations to unlock the most complex machine we know, the human body. From a spark in a neuron to the heart, lungs, bones, and muscles. Step by step, system by system. A dream where medicine isn't just reactive but predictive, personalized, precise, participatory. But dreams need more than vision. They need a plan. Ours is to create the ecosystem where scientists, doctors, patients, and innovators come together to make in silico medicine part of everyday care. For everyone, everywhere. That's our mission. Be part of it.
You know, a lot has changed over these past years. Our community has grown, becoming stronger, more diverse, and also more connected. We have launched new activities, successfully completed several EU-funded projects, and expanded our impact across science, policy, and society. And now it's time for our image to reflect that growth, better present our mission, our values, and our vision for the future. VPH continues to play a crucial role as an enabler of the digital transformation in healthcare, biomedical research, and clinical practice. In redesigning our visual identity, we wanted to preserve the sense of progress and innovation that has always defined our logo, that forward, upward motion, symbolizing momentum and ambition. At the same time, we wanted to make it simpler and more accessible, echoing our commitment to clarity, transparency, and inclusivity, especially as we engage with new audiences beyond the scientific community. As an enabler, VPH is a piece of the puzzle, a section of the circle that will make the transformation of healthcare. This philosophy also guided the creation of our new website, designed to be open, intuitive, and welcoming to all the people we connect with, from scientists and clinicians to patients, policymakers, and also regulators. This information is structured like an onion, with clear, simple explanations on the outer layers to general audiences, and progressively deeper, more technical content as you explore further in. We invite you all to take a look at our new website, and especially for those who are not members, to take a look at our activities. We hope you'll find enough motivation to become part of the community. Being a membership-based organization, our members are not only the primary reason for everything we do, they are also the ones who, through their support, make it possible for us to continue to work. As we approach to our today's event, we want to take a moment to thank all of you. We were truly moved by the incredible amount, especially by the many participants who are not yet VPH members and that joined us out of genuine curiosity and interest. So, as a heartfelt thank to you, we are delighted to share a special announcement. Anyone who signs up today for any kind of membership from now until the end of the year will have their membership automatically extended until the 31st of December 2026. In other words, our membership is free for the rest of the year, for the rest of 2025, this year. So for any question, feel free to get in touch with us. And now I thank all our speakers for their incredible talks, and I hand the floor back to our director, Liesbet Geris, for the final talk, the final words of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Davide. And first, I would like to actually thank the entire VPH team who have worked incredibly hard to make sure that all of the work that is being done in the community and within the organization is presented to everyone in the best way possible in this website. So please have a look, and of course you can always let us know if you see opportunities for further improvement. And as Davide already mentioned, as a membership-based organization or an ecosystem organization, we work for the entire community. But our membership basis is really what gives us the certainty that we're addressing the community's needs. That gives us the opportunity to showcase more of the great science that is being done within the community. And this then gives us also the credibility and the weight when we interact with various stakeholders. So we invite you to really join VPH, join our forces to realize an equitable, inclusive, and sustainable digital transformation of health and care, making a tangible difference in the life of patients. Thank you very much for joining today.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, and have a great day or night or evening or afternoon. See you next time.